My name is Isabella Marie Thompson. I'm 32 years old, and I used to believe that if I worked hard enough, loved quietly enough, succeeded gracefully enough, my family would finally see me. I was wrong. Growing up as the youngest daughter in the Thompson family meant I was the background music to my older brother, Aaron's symphony. He was louder, funnier, more dramatic, the kind of person who filled a room just by walking into it. I was the quiet one. When Aaron graduated high school with straight C's, my parents threw him a party at Romano's Italian Bistro. There were balloons, a custom cake. My mother cried during a toast about how proud we are of the man you're becoming. 3 years later, when I graduated valedictorian, my father shook my hand in the kitchen and said, "That's great, Bella. Have you thought about what Aaron's doing after Target?" That was the rhythm of our family. When Aaron got his first apartment in downtown Denver, my parents bought him a couch from Ashley Home Store and spent an entire weekend assembling IKEA bookshelves. When I bought my first house at 25, a modest 3-bedroom ranch in Lakewood, Colorado, my mother asked if I understood how furnaces worked. "That's a lot of responsibility for someone your age," she'd said. I remember standing in the empty living room the day I got the keys. Sunlight poured across the hardwood floors like approval I had never received from them. It wasn't flashy. No granite countertops, no sweeping staircase, just quiet stability. It was mine. I had saved every extra dollar from my federal job. Extra shifts, no vacations, used furniture. I wanted something no one could take credit for. When I called to tell them, the silence on the other end of the line lasted too long. "You bought a house?" my mother asked skeptically. In the background, I heard Erin laugh. She can barely afford her car payments. My boyfriend, Daniel Brooks, was sitting across from me at the time, watching my face fall. After I hung up, he reached across the table and squeezed my hand. "They don't see you," he said softly. He was wrong about one thing. They saw me. They just never believed in me. Family dinners at Olive Garden became rituals of subtle humiliation. Aaron would raise his glass dramatically. "To Bella and her mortgage chains. Smart people rent," he'd announce. "Flexibility is freedom." Meanwhile, he bounced between jobs at Starbucks and Whole Foods, borrowing money from our parents for deposits and overdue rent. But somehow his instability was called finding himself. My stability was called reckless. Daniel tried not to get involved. He'd sit beside me under the warm lighting of endless breadsticks and whisper, "You don't have to prove anything." But when his ex-girlfriend, Melissa Carter, would text him during dinner, little just checking in messages, I'd feel that same familiar invisibility creeping back in. Not jealousy, just displacement. Like I was always the extra chair at the table. Last summer, I accepted a 6-month overseas assignment in Eastern Europe. Officially, it was administrative oversight. Unofficially, it was financial crime investigation tied to international fraud networks. The details were classified. The responsibility wasn't. Before leaving, I prepared my house meticulously. Automatic utility payments, lawn care through Green Thumb Services, a comprehensive security system installed by ADT. Emergency contact information given to my parents, a spare key, clearly labeled for emergencies only. "This is purely for burst pipes or break-ins," I explained carefully at the kitchen counter. Aaron rolled his eyes. "Relax, Bella. It's not Fort Knox." Daniel hugged me at the airport before my flight to Frankfurt. "You always carry the weight alone," he murmured into my hair. "Just promise me you'll come home." I didn't know then how complicated that promise would become. The work overseas consumed me. Long hours. Complex financial trails crossing borders, coordination with international law enforcement. I was good at it. Respected. Essential. Something I had never been inside my own family. I called home occasionally. "House is still standing," Aaron joked once. "No disasters yet." I believed him. That belief would cost me everything. The first sign that something was wrong didn't come from my family. It came from my supervisor. We were in a secured conference room in Prague during what was supposed to be my final week overseas. The investigation had reached a critical stage. We were tracking a cross-border laundering operation that had taken months to untangle. Special Agent Marcus Thompson pulled me aside after the briefing. "Agent Rodriguez," he said quietly, holding a classified tablet, "we've got something unusual." My stomach tightened. "What kind of unusual?" "There's been activity at your registered address in Lakewood." I blinked. "What kind of activity?" He turned the screen toward me. "Property transaction flagged by federal monitoring systems. Ownership transfer filed." My blood went cold. "That's impossible," I said. "I own that property. There's no transfer." "That's why it's flagged," he replied calmly. "Real estate fraud is sometimes used to compromise federal employees. Given your clearance and the sensitivity of your assignment, We treat any irregularity as a potential security risk. My throat went dry. Who filed it? He hesitated. Initial documents list your brother, Aaron Thompson, as power of attorney. The room felt suddenly too small. That can't be right, I whispered. I never signed power of attorney. We'll investigate, but you need to return stateside immediately. The flight home was torture. Operational security protocols meant I couldn't call my parents, couldn't call Daniel, couldn't demand answers. All I could do was sit in silence somewhere above the Atlantic, replaying every conversation before I left. The spare key, Aaron's casual jokes, my mother's sighs about responsibility. When I landed at Denver International Airport on a gray Tuesday morning, I drove straight to Lakewood. My house looked normal until I saw the sign. A bold red sold sign from Coldwell Banker planted in my front lawn like a flag marking conquered territory. There was a lockbox on my door. My key didn't work. For a moment, I just stood there on the porch. The wind moved gently through the neighborhood trees. A dog barked in the distance. Everything looked peaceful, but my life had just shifted off its axis. With shaking hands, I called the number on the sign. Thompson Property Solutions, a cheerful woman answered. This is Isabella Thompson, I said, forcing calm into my voice. Someone put a sold sign on my house. I need to understand what's happening. There was a pause. Oh, she said, you must be the sister. The word hit like a slap. Excuse me? Aaron mentioned you might call. He explained you'd been struggling with payments and finally agreed to let him handle the sale. Congratulations on getting out from under that mortgage. My stomach dropped. Aaron does not own this property, I said slowly. I do. I'm sorry, ma'am, but we have power of attorney documents and a deed showing ownership transfer. The sale closed last week. Closed. Last week. I hung up. Then I called my parents. My mother answered, cheerful. Bella, you're back. How was your trip? Where's Aaron? There was a beat. He's here. We're actually planning a little celebration dinner at Applebee's. He made such a smart decision. We're so proud of him. My hands trembled. Put him on the phone. A shuffle. Then Aaron's voice, Sug, amused. Hey, little sis, welcome back. What did you do to my house? A sigh, like I was being dramatic. I fixed your problem. You were 3 months behind on payments. The bank was starting foreclosure proceedings. I stepped in before it ruined your credit. That's not possible. The documents don't lie, Bella. My father's voice cut in on speaker. He showed us everything. Notices from Wells Fargo. You were in trouble. I felt like I was losing my grip on reality. All my payments are automatic. I haven't missed a single one in 3 years. Maybe overseas stress messed with your memory, my mother said gently. Gaslighting wrapped in concern. Aaron continued, enjoying himself. I found a buyer, a young couple, took over the debt. You even made a little profit. $18,000 after fees. Where is that money? I deposited it into your account, he said casually, minus what you owed me for handling everything. I couldn't breathe. You forged my signature. Silence. Then laughter. Bella, don't be ridiculous. You signed power of attorney the day before you left. You said it was for emergencies. I had signed nothing. But Aaron had always been good with imitation. In high school, he used to sign our mother's name on his report cards. The memory landed like a stone in my chest. Before I could respond, my secure phone buzzed. Agent Rodriguez, immediate debrief required. Federal crime reported at your address. Are you secure? Federal crime. At my address. I typed back. Secure. With family. The second call came minutes later from an unknown number. Is this Isabella Thompson? A panicked male voice asked. Yes. This is James Patterson from Patterson and Associates. We represented the buyers of your property. My pulse spiked. Why are FBI agents in our office? He blurted. They have a warrant for all documentation related to your house. They're saying the transaction was fraudulent and may involve national security violations. National security. Because Aaron didn't know. None of them knew. My property wasn't just a house. Due to my clearance, it was registered under federal monitoring protocols. Any unauthorized transfer automatically triggered investigation. Mr. Patterson, I said carefully, stepping into the kitchen for privacy. I never authorized the sale. The power of attorney is forged. Silence. Oh my God, he whispered. I could hear chaos behind him. Raised voices, doors closing. The FBI is asking about wire fraud and identity theft, he said. They're questioning our verification procedures. Are the buyers there? Yes, they've already moved in. They're victims, I said quietly. Tell them to cooperate fully. When I walked back into the living room at my parents' house an hour later, Aaron was holding court like a hero. And now Bella doesn't have to worry about property taxes, he was saying proudly. I basically gave her back her freedom. My mother smiled at me. Isn't he wonderful? I looked at my brother. He truly believed he had saved me. Or maybe he needed to believe that. Aaron, I said calmly, who are the buyers? Robert and Sarah Martinez. Sweet couple. My phone buzzed again. Federal agents en route to your parents' address. Estimated arrival, 12 minutes. I sat down slowly. Aaron, I said softly, my house was under federal registration. He rolled his eyes. Bella, stop being dramatic. Any unauthorized transaction triggers automatic federal investigation. The room went quiet. My father scoffed. This is absurd. Outside, car doors slammed. Black SUVs. Aaron's smile faltered. A firm knock at the door. FBI. The word landed like a gunshot. The knock came again. Not loud, not aggressive, just certain. My mother looked at me as if I had summoned something unnatural. This isn't funny, Bella, she whispered. I'm not joking. Dad opened the door. 4 agents stepped inside, badges visible, calm but unmistakably authoritative. The air in the room changed instantly, like oxygen had been replaced with something heavier. Special Agent Marcus Thompson met my eyes briefly. Professional. Neutral. Agent Rodriguez, he said formally. My father blinked. Agent? Aaron laughed nervously. What is this? Some kind of mistake? Special Agent Thompson's gaze shifted to him. Aaron Thompson? Yes? You are under arrest for wire fraud, identity theft, forgery, and illegal transfer of federally monitored property. My mother gasped. That's insane, Aaron barked. I was helping my sister. Helping. The word echoed in my chest. 2 agents stepped forward. The metallic click of handcuffs slicing through the living room felt surreal, like it was happening in someone else's house. Dad's face drained of color. This has to be a misunderstanding. He had power of attorney. The power of attorney was forged, Agent Thompson replied evenly. The mortgage default notices were fabricated. He impersonated his sister to Wells Fargo. He initiated a fraudulent property transfer while the homeowner was on an overseas federal assignment. My mother looked at me like she didn't recognize me. You told us you worked in administration. I do, I said quietly. Federal Financial Crime Administration. Aaron stared at me, betrayal flashing across his face. You called them. I didn't have to, I answered. The system did. Outside, neighbors had begun peeking through curtains. Aaron's voice cracked as agents guided him toward the door. I thought you were drowning, he shouted at me. You were gone for months. You never came back. You never said anything. You never asked, I replied. That stopped him. For half a second, his bravado collapsed. Then the door shut behind him. Silence swallowed the room. The congratulations Aaron banner sagged above the fireplace like a cruel joke. My mother sank onto the couch. Bella, she whispered, please tell me this isn't real. It's real. Dad paced, hands shaking. You're his sister. You could have stopped this. I looked at him slowly. He committed federal felonies, Dad, forged my name, sold my house, used fake foreclosure documents. You could have talked to him. I tried. They hadn't been listening. No one ever listened when I spoke calmly. It always took catastrophe. An hour later, I sat at the dining table giving my official statement. Aaron had downloaded Wells Fargo letterhead templates, created fake delinquency notices, practiced my signature repeatedly, presented forged documents to a real estate agent and title company, convinced our parents I was 3 months behind on payments. The buyers, Robert and Sarah Martinez, had already been contacted by federal agents. Victims, just like me. Daniel called while agents were still in the house. I just saw 3 federal vehicles on your parents' street, he said, voice tight. What's happening? It's Aaron. Silence. What did he do? He sold my house. Another pause. Isabella, that's not possible. It is. Daniel exhaled slowly. I'm coming over. After the agents left, the house felt hollow. My mother kept repeating. He was trying to help. Dad avoided my eyes. I stood in the center of the living room and felt something unfamiliar. Not anger. Clarity. For the first time in my life, the narrative had cracked. I wasn't the irresponsible one. I wasn't drowning. Aaron hadn't rescued me. He had sabotaged me. And my parents had believed him without hesitation. Daniel arrived 20 minutes later. He didn't ask questions in front of my parents. He just stood beside me, steady. When we finally stepped outside, he pulled me into his arms. You always carry it alone, he murmured. I shouldn't have to. You don't. For a brief second, I let myself lean into him fully. But even then, somewhere in the back of my mind, I remembered the text from Melissa, his ex, the subtle reappearances whenever things got complicated. Crisis reveals everything. And I wondered quietly what this crisis would reveal about us. The next morning, headlines were local but sharp. Lakewood property fraud linked to federal investigation. Aaron's mugshot stared back at me from my phone screen. The golden child. Now in handcuffs. My mother called repeatedly that week. Can't you talk to someone? Reduce the charges? I can't interfere, I said gently, and I won't. It was the first boundary I had ever enforced without apology. Aaron was denied bail initially due to flight risk and severity of charges: wire fraud, identity theft, forgery, illegal transfer of federally monitored property. Each charge carried weight, each one real. During my formal debrief with federal investigators, I learned the full scope. Aaron had been watching my house for months, driving by, talking to neighbors, collecting mail samples. He convinced himself I was failing because he needed that to be true. If I wasn't failing, then what did that make him? That night, I returned to Lakewood. The house was sealed temporarily as part of the investigation. Evidence tags on the door. My sanctuary turned crime scene. I stood on the sidewalk under the fading sunset and felt something shift inside me. Not grief, not rage. Resolution. Aaron had built an entire narrative about me in his head. My parents had believed it. Now reality was correcting the story, and it was brutal. Daniel slipped his hand into mine. "I'm proud of you," he said softly. "For what?" "For not shrinking." For the first time, I didn't. Federal investigations move slowly, until they don't. Within weeks, the full scope of Aaron's fraud unraveled like a thread pulled from an expensive suit. The fake foreclosure notices? He had copied official letterhead from online images. The Wells Fargo confirmation? He had impersonated me over the phone, using details he'd overheard during family conversations. The power of attorney? Meticulously drafted using state templates, notarized by someone who failed to verify identity properly. And my signature? He had practiced it, over and over. Investigators found pages of attempts in his apartment, my name written in different ink weights, different angles. He'd studied the curve of my I, the sharp finish of my T. It wasn't impulsive. It was calculated. The Martinez family cooperated fully. Robert and Sarah were devastated but composed. They had drained their savings for that house. They'd already painted the nursery. I met them once briefly at the request of investigators. "I'm so sorry," Sarah said through tears. "We thought everything was legitimate." "You were victims," I told her. "This wasn't your fault." Federal restitution procedures ensured they would recover their down payment and associated costs. But dreams don't refund so easily. The real estate agent lost her license pending investigation. The title company implemented stricter identity verification protocols. Aaron remained in custody. The sentencing hearing took place 4 months later. I sat in the courtroom, hands folded in my lap, Daniel beside me. My parents sat behind us. Aaron looked smaller in an orange jumpsuit, not golden, not charismatic, just human. When given the opportunity to speak, he surprised everyone. "I convinced myself Isabella was in trouble," he said, voice trembling. "I thought she was too proud to admit it. But the truth is, I couldn't accept that she was succeeding." The courtroom was silent. "She was always the quiet one. I needed her to need me. If she didn't, then what was I?" My mother began crying softly. Aaron swallowed. "My crimes weren't about helping her. They were about protecting my image as the responsible older brother." That was the first honest thing he had ever said about us. The judge sentenced him to 4 years in federal prison. Wire fraud and identity theft carry weight. National security implications carry more. When the gavel struck, my father flinched like he'd been hit. Outside the courthouse, reporters lingered. Daniel shielded me from cameras. "Do you regret cooperating?" one journalist shouted. I didn't answer, because regret wasn't the word. 6 months later, my house was released from evidence. Federal security protocols were upgraded. Reinforced monitoring, enhanced verification alerts. Ironically, Aaron's crime made my property more protected than ever. The first night I slept there again, the house felt different. Not broken, just clarified. Daniel brought takeout and a bottle of wine. "You okay?" he asked gently as we sat on the living room floor. "I thought I'd feel victorious," I admitted. "And? I feel exposed." He brushed a strand of hair from my face. "They see you now." Yes, they did. But recognition born from disaster isn't the same as love. My parents invited me to dinner a week later. No Olive Garden jokes, no mortgage comments, just quiet. Dad cleared his throat halfway through the meal. "We were wrong," he said finally. 3 words I had waited my entire life to hear. "We believed Aaron because it fit the story we had about you," Mom added. "We thought you were overwhelmed, irresponsible. We never questioned it." "I never missed a payment," I said softly. "I know." The apology wasn't dramatic. It was heavy and necessary. Meanwhile, Daniel's ex, Melissa, resurfaced again, this time under the guise of concern. "I heard about your brother," she texted him. "If you need to talk." He showed me the message immediately. "I don't," he said simply, blocking her number in front of me. Small gestures matter. Crises reveal loyalties. Aaron served his sentence. 4 years. Federal prison changes people. When he was released on parole, he lived in a supervised halfway house in Aurora and worked at a distribution center. His credit was destroyed. His reputation gone. The golden child had fallen, and I had survived. Aaron's first supervised visit to my house happened on a cold November afternoon. The same living room, the same walls, the same place where handcuffs had clicked shut around his wrists. He stood awkwardly near the doorway, hands in his jacket pockets, parole officer waiting outside in the car. "I never thought I'd be back here like this," he said quietly. "Neither did I." He looked around slowly. "You upgraded the security." "I didn't have a choice." A faint, humorless smile crossed his face. "For what it's worth, I'm glad it's still yours." We sat across from each other. No audience, no banner, no applause. "I really thought I was helping you," he said again. "I know. But that wasn't the real reason." "No," I agreed, "it wasn't." He exhaled, shoulders slumping. "I couldn't stand that you didn't need me. You were stable, respected, important, and I was drifting. You could have asked me how I was doing." I didn't want the answer. That was the heart of it. He had needed me to be failing, because if I wasn't, then he had to confront himself. "I destroyed everything because I couldn't accept who you actually were," he said. "You destroyed trust," I corrected gently, "but not everything." He nodded slowly. When he left, the house felt lighter, not because he had apologized, but because I no longer needed one. The case became something of a cautionary tale inside federal circles. Special Agent Marcus Thompson occasionally sent me updates. They used it in training seminars, an example of how family assumptions can evolve into financial crimes. The internal file had an unofficial nickname, the Helpful Brother. Last Christmas, I received a card from him. "Hope your family dynamics are less eventful this year." They were, but not because things returned to normal. Because normal had finally been exposed. Daniel and I stayed steady through it all. Crisis had tested us. Melissa faded into irrelevance, a footnote in a story that demanded loyalty. One evening, months after Aaron's release, Daniel stood with me on the back porch. "You know," he said softly, "for years they saw you as fragile." "I know, but you were the strongest one in the room." The house stood quiet in the Lakewood neighborhood. The Martinez family eventually found another home. Sarah sent me a handwritten card thanking me for cooperating fully so they could recover their savings. The real estate agent rebuilt her career somewhere else. The title company rewrote its verification policies. Aaron rebuilt his life slowly, without applause. And my parents? They learned to ask before assuming. Sometimes I think about how strange it was that it took FBI agents in my childhood living room for my competence to be acknowledged. But maybe that's the lesson. Sometimes the people who claim to know you best are the ones most committed to an outdated version of you. Sometimes protection means consequences. And sometimes the quiet daughter becomes the one no one can ignore. I'm Isabella Marie Thompson, 32 years old, homeowner, federal agent, sister, and no longer invisible.